thanks everybody for joining us today. Really pumped for this discussion. We are officially at webinar number 11 in the series of 12. This is the Building an Enterprise Level System with Xero series presented by CFO Tech Stack. My name is Jack Teal. I'm the APAC commercial lead at Mayday. We're on a mission to mend month end for larger Xero businesses, beginning with the needs of those who are multi-entity, intercompany recharges, cross-entity bank reconciliations, keeping your intercompany loans in balance, all the things that we're solving today. And there's a little bit of background on me. I started my career as an accountant with PwC about 10 years ago now. I completed my chartered there, and then I went and worked as an advisor to SMBs. I've spent the last 5 or so years around the Xero accounting tech ecosystem in a variety of different roles, and I'm really passionate about what Xero's done for small businesses and really bullish about where it's going next. Particularly in the space of larger businesses, as we're seeing more and more small businesses grow up on Xero to become large ones with unique and different needs. What has been a little bit clear, though, is that there isn't really a lot of relevant content for the in-house finance teams, the virtual CFOs, and the accountants who are supporting these larger Xero businesses, which is why I'm really thrilled to be here, diving deeper into this space, thanks to CFO Tech Stack. So that's probably enough about me and enough about the session as a quick intro. I want to hand over to our awesome panelists now to introduce themselves. So Shaun, if I can throw to you first, just to say hey and a short little intro.
Thanks, Jack. Hey, everyone else. So Shaun from Air Accounting, an accounting firm based in Sydney. We're trying to provide the kind of next generation of finance teams for small, medium businesses looking to grow. And tech is a big piece of that. And prior to this, in a previous kind of life, working in mid-tier accounting firms through kind of tax advisory and audit. So, and the audits were kind of a lot of large, medium-sized private companies. So experienced a lot of the financial controls and the nuances around that.
Awesome. Thanks, Shaun. Luke, I'll throw it to you.
Hey everyone, I'm Luke. So I come from a background in engineering and now work for Yaron. And at Yaron, we specialise in developing affordable housing. With that, we've got the capacity to complete full end-to-end developments, including our own in-house leasing, short stay and strata companies. And with that, we currently have, just as a reference, 70 Xero companies set up at the moment.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to dig into how you've managed to make that work, Luke. And Justin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Hi, everyone. My name's Justin from ApprovalMax. So I joined ApprovalMax last year after being at Xero for 10 years. And the reason why I joined ApprovalMax is that I actually worked on a few projects where the user roles and the functionalities in Xero really didn't scale to larger, more complex organizations. And I knew that ApprovalMax was an important part of solving that problem.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, and thank you all for joining us. Going to be a great discussion. In terms of setting the scene just a little bit more, as mentioned earlier, at Mayday, we're serving larger Xero businesses. Sounds like, Justin, you guys are doing a lot of the same. Shaun and Luke, you've got experience on this side. And at least what I'm hearing and what we're hearing is that finance teams in these larger Xero businesses often have two key questions. One is Xero still the right system for me? And if it is, how long is that going to be the case? Because I'm trying to plan for the future and I want some peace of mind that I can scale and grow with Xero as my accounting platform. We know that the move to ERP is horrible and hectic, quote unquote, from one of our own clients. It's incredibly expensive, and that's before 58% of ERP implementations fail. So we're seeing a lot of businesses, finance teams, really weigh up whether or not it is a move that they have to make. The Xero ecosystem is becoming more and more powerful. They're able to achieve more and more with Xero, and they're really trying to delay that decision as much as possible. So we want to clarify for you throughout this series, how far can you go with Xero as your accounting platform? The series is not Mayday content. It's not a product marketing webinar. It's not a product demo. This is all about adding as much value as possible to our target audience, to our customers who are out there, and really righting the misconception that you can't scale with Xero into your growth phase. I know Xero's own website will probably have you believe they're just for small businesses, but as a general ledger, as an accounting tool, it is something that can achieve great scale. So yeah, really looking forward to diving into a lot more of that today. In terms of the agenda, we want to delve into what Xero does well with respect to financial controls. We want to then go into the key challenges and pain points that you'll begin to experience as you grow in size and complexity. And then we want to discuss, of course, the ecosystem and how that can help you go further with Xero before having our final discussion around when might an ERP be the only solution. So with all that being said, we'll then finish off with a kind of top tip or takeaway. We'll then go to the Q&A section as well. So if you've got questions, as I said earlier, please throw them in and we'll make sure that we address them. So as a starting point, Shaun, I want to come to you first with a few questions wrapped up in one. So firstly, what kind of needs do larger businesses have with respect to financial controls? What do they need to be thinking about? What does Xero do well in that area? And then where might you begin to experience some pain or some challenges if you're not leveraging the ecosystem?
Cool. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, so larger businesses, or the ones we work with generally, so businesses kind of between $1 million and 50 mil kind of turnover, looking to scale up that path. Yeah, usually starting out, it's just getting the business owner off there from doing the finances themselves. And from there, it's usually, making sure there's an approval process in place, whether an expense is appropriate for the business. So should that expense exist in the system? And then a secondary level approval around whether, the cash going out the door. And so that's kind of where we start, going beyond a business owner just doing the finances themselves. And it's a way for our business as well to help them in that process. And generally, the further that goes up in size and complexity, might then become multi-level approvers at each of those stages. Yeah, so that's the main around that. What Xero does well, it starts some of that process. So in the invoices and bills, there is a stage process of going from draft through to final approval. And sitting behind that, there is, there's some granularity on user control where you can limit what certain users can do. But in our experience, that's fairly basic, and particularly on the expense approval ends in terms of cash going out the door as well. So it starts that process great for one or two users in and around there, but as soon as you get beyond that, it starts to max out.
Cool. I mean, Luke, it'd be good to, is that your experience as well? Was it, within 70 entities and, a team, I imagine there's some challenges with just managing it on Xero, but is that where you started? How was that experience? Was there any particular trigger point for you that was like, okay, we now need to make sure we've got a system in place for this?
Yeah, very much so. Like, we started off with Reckon, and then we moved over to Xero probably about 5-6 years ago now. That was just basically to have it in the cloud so more than one person could access the accounts at once. And from there, as our business has just built and built and built, we've kind of found we need to get these add-ons into Xero that can assist us with what we need to do, including, as just mentioned, different approvers at different levels. For us, we started off, people would save invoices in a folder and that would get checked by the director. And then from there, that's how we used to do the bills.
Yeah.
So now, as you can imagine, with 70 entities, that's just, that's impossible to do. So yeah, we've had to look elsewhere and come up with a few different solutions for that.
Yeah, okay, but it wasn't triggered by, it was I suppose a proactive fix rather than a reaction to something that went wrong or anything along those lines.
Correct. Yeah, just trying to be proactive. I think that's vital, especially when you're talking about financial controls.
Oh, absolutely. Justin, I'm sure across all of the different clients that you work with or that you've seen move to ApprovalMax, it's not always a nice story that begins the journey to getting their financial controls sorted. What do you guys generally see from your end, the reasons why people are saying, oh, we've got some pain here? What are those key elements, those trigger points that are bringing them to ApprovalMax?
Yeah, a few different things. I mean, it usually has something to do with approval processes taking too long. People are spending a lot of time. What ends up happening is once you outgrow that one level of approver that Xero allows you to have, and keep in mind, QuickBooks Online doesn't even have that level of approvals at all. So it's even worse in the QBO world. Once you've outgrown that, then people start using email-based system, paper-based systems, Slack and Teams messages to handle things. And then you just get these real bottlenecks. And that's for like approving bills. But then I see some real horror stories where people with paying bills, where some organizations are spending, days preparing Excel files to send to their directors of these are the bills that we want to pay. And then that's going via email and getting signed off, and then it has to be manually entered into banking systems. So finance teams can have these massive inefficiencies and bottlenecks when it comes to around approvals. And then there's simply the fact that the software doesn't allow you to have proper separation of duties. Like with Xero, if you can approve a bill, you can also pay a bill. So there's no separation between approving and paying a bill. So that's just one example of the limitations you encounter in small business software, accounting software.
Yeah, I mean, Shaun, I'd be curious to get your perspective on this as well, just around, I suppose, is it just a matter of efficiency here, where it gets too much, we're managing this, it's a time-consuming process, or how do you see the weighing up of trying to be proactive and getting ahead of this as something that we should have in place, but also something that it's another thing to implement. We've got other priorities. We're trying to grow the business. When does financial controls start to take priority and precedence over other things?
Yeah, I think like a strong finance manager, a strong internal finance person can really drive the business. So it brings accountability through a business as well. So if you start with strategy of the business at the top and then work out, okay, what are we trying to do as a whole business? Where does the finance team sit in that? And then who's accountable for driving certain aspects of this forward? And some of that's then drives through the finance and the approvals, because you'll then have budgets for certain departments of the business, who's responsible for that budget, who's they'll define the chart of account to some respect that sits within that. So I think what I'm saying is, if you get in early in this habit, it is a really good way of growing a business as well, by getting the business owner out of those functions, getting people in there that are accountable for that as well, and then they sign off on things, and once you do approve and sign off on things, you feel that accountability. You're now responsible. Your name's on the the audit trails. So in our experience, we try to get in early with it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, just around probably one of the intangibles that people aren't thinking about. Just, I want my team to feel that level of accountability when they approve something, that it's their name going through that process. So, I mean, I think we've had a good discussion there around points 1 and 2, and this is quite consistent theming throughout the series, which is, what does Xero do well? Is generally it's a great place to start. You can achieve quite a bit without needing to worry about an add-on. But then when you do start to grow the team or grow complexity or have a need for approvals, well, you've got access to the ecosystem and you've got solutions there when you need them. So from an ecosystem perspective, Luke, I might go to you first actually on this, and just, it'd be good to hear your experience going through, you went from Reckon to Xero. I'm sure the ecosystem element was new to that. Once you'd made that move, you now had access to this ecosystem of tools that you could bolt onto Xero. How did you go about finding a solution to this particular challenge? And, does it feel overwhelming to go into the Xero App Store? How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, you probably hit on the head. There's quite a lot of programs, so it's just trying to find the right one. The one we ended up with is ApprovalMax, which works really well for us. Again, having so many entities, I think we would have 30 of our entities attached with ApprovalMax. So it makes it easy for our GM, not only our GM, but our CFO and everyone in between to approve the bills. We have a pretty simple one. Anyone can upload a bill. From there, that gets checked by our accounts department. So they do the first check on ApprovalMax to make sure it's going to the right account. From there, that needs to be checked off by the manager of that specific department. So, which is kind of handy because you can just have, everyone lined up in that approval stage, but you do not need to approve that bill. And from there, CFO and general manager, great software. You can use it on your phone. Very simple to approve the bills, and it just takes that element out of our general manager's head of, okay, has this bill been checked? As an example, before, a lot of bills would just get dropped in there. No one would really vet them. And then by the time it's gone to the general manager, he's thinking, okay, well, is this actually approved by the lead, or is this just been sent to our accounts department and they've just uploaded this bill to be paid? Is the work being done? All these kind of issues, which now when you look at ApprovalMax, it's clear who approved it, exactly what second they approved it. And it just, takes that stress off our whole department.
Is it centralized? I mean, I imagine there's a lot of other people here with multiple Xero organizations. So, from a multiple Xeros to one ApprovalMax situation, how does that interface work for the team? I know we're getting into specifics around how a product works, but I'm just curious, within 70 entities or even 30 that you're using this for, I assume you're not logging into 30 different
No, correct. It's all
screens.
centralized, which is really handy. And at the top, all you do is, depending on what company you want to enter the bill in, click on it, change the company, done. And it's almost like just as easy as entering an invoice into Xero itself, exact same process, but just on a online cloud-based software.
Yeah, no, great. And I mean, there's other solutions out there too. I mean, I appreciate Justin's here representing ApprovalMax, and they're probably one of the leaders, if not the leader in this space. But at the same time, that's the beauty of the ecosystem, is that there are options out there, and for nuanced needs and for, different complexities, there are different solutions for different people. One of the beautiful things about a best of breed system. Shaun, if you've got a client coming to you with some of these challenges, what's the process to find a solution? How, are there a lot that you would consider for this kind of stuff, or a few, or how do you go about managing the complexity that is the volume of apps?
Yeah, good question. There were very few for a long time. I think ApprovalMax was really early in this space. I think when Xero first kind of came out, I remember looking at it and going, this is great, but it's got so much flexibility. But then fraud and control and all of that started to creep in. Yeah, I think ApprovalMax was really early. There's a few others that do limited approval, so one step beyond Xero, but not to the extent that ApprovalMax does.
Sure.
And some of those are linked through to payments as well. So I think when you're choosing, it's what's the volume, what's the complexity of your approval matrix, and then do you need that to tie into cash going out the door as well?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be good to maybe Justin, you can speak to this because you're in it every day. I mean, there is the approval element of this process, and there's the payment element of the process. How do you see it fitting in with a tool like ApprovalMax or other solutions in the approval space versus an actual, banking tool or a payments platform? Do they all? Yeah, how do you see that segregation of those or the combination of those?
Well, one thing to say is that we already have batch payment approvals in ApprovalMax, so you can do approvals for the payments. We also have a direct integration with Airwallex. So if you've got an Airwallex account, you can actually initiate the payment from ApprovalMax and pay, multi-currency and BPay and local currency accounts. So we do all of that. And, as Luke mentioned before, the good thing is you can give limited access without giving access to Xero to staff members, so you can enter bills and purchase orders as well. And now we've also added the sales side as well, so you can do quotes and sales invoices now as well. Yeah, so yeah, we're doing sort of the whole spectrum, but at least through integrations. But yeah, as Shaun said, there are some that sort of their starting point was where a payment's provided, and then they've kind of bolted on some sort of approval functionality to that solution. So, as you find in the Xero ecosystem, often different apps have a different starting points, but they start heading into the same direction, and that's what you're finding in the space.
Yeah, great. No, that's really helpful. I'll just remind anyone who's listening that if you do have a question around any of this stuff that we're discussing, please feel free to pop it in the Q&A because we'll be sure to address anything that comes through there. So if you're hearing anything here, you got specific questions on, chuck it in and we'll get back to you. So Luke, beyond that, is there anything else people need to be, sorry, Justin, beyond what you've just mentioned, is there anything else that people need to be aware that falls within the scope of a scope of a system in this space? So you've mentioned approvals, but that's obviously quite broad. We're talking different, multi-layered approvals. We're talking batch payments to a payment system, integrations to the payments. We're talking about invoices, credit notes, all this kind of stuff. Where does the swim lane start and end for this area of tech?
Yeah, well, for ApprovalMax especially, I really see us as having like two pillars. One is sort of the approval side of things, and the other side is financial controls, like things like having full audit trails. We attach an audit report for everything that gets approved. We have some inbuilt fraud detection, so if someone bypasses ApprovalMax, you can detect it. But once you're getting into larger entities, you might also want to start doing like some consolidated reporting for your different entities, and that's where your various reporting apps are, which I'm sure you've done sessions with, are important. You've got your inter-entity transactions, which is like your Mayday comes into it. So there's, and then I don't want to skip ahead too much, but then you also have to run, we've already hinted at this before, you start running into some of Xero system limits, and you've got to sometimes come up with workarounds for that. And generally the way it would work is that you've got the trading aspect of the business, and that usually gets handled out of an app partner. So that might be a really robust inventory system that can integrate. Let's say it's an e-commerce business, can integrate with the shopping cart and the Amazon store and handle maybe thousands and thousands of transactions every month. But Xero is really good at being that single source of truth and being the admin and the single ledger aspect of it. And but if it's a fairly complex business, you probably don't want to be handing the keys to the Xero file to every person in the business, and that's where ApprovalMax comes in.
Yeah, great. I think that's a nice segue into the next part of the conversation, Justin. There is just a quick question I'll just go to you quickly on, which is, does ApprovalMax do end-of-month statement reconciliations?
No, we don't. I don't know if this is related to the question, but one thing we do now, it's currently in beta, is we actually have an accrual functionality. So let's say you report on an accrual basis, and you've got all these bills that are on approval that are currently still being approved, which means they haven't been pushed through to Xero yet. Now we have a very simple thing you can run in ApprovalMax that'll run a report on those and push it through as a single ledger. So if you need to wrap up your end of month, it can get all those accrual things into Xero for you.
Cool. No worries. Hope that's helpful, Lisa. Good question. Appreciate that. So going back to the segue into kind of point 4 of the agenda, when might an ERP be the only solution? I mean, ultimately, we're trying to correct the myth that you can't scale with Xero and that you can't grow a large business or make a large business work with Xero as the accounting platform. But I guess, I mean, it'd be good to get your perspective, Luke. You've got 70 entities on Xero. Has there been a point where you guys have discussed, is this going to work for us long term? Are you thinking we need to move ERP, or is it a decision you're dreading or avoiding, or really confident that you're not going to have to make? Where are you at?
Yeah, this really comes up all the time, especially with the multiple entities we have. You know, basically when it does come up, we'll sit down, and there's often a reason. So something will happen. Someone will be like, oh, look, we can't do this. And we'll sit down and go, okay, is that all? Are there any other options we need to consider? And from there, we'll either sit down, work that, can we find a workaround in Xero? Or can we find an add-on that'll solve that problem for us? And that's how we usually, by the time we do that, it's kind of like, okay, no, we're happy here.
Yep. So you've managed to find solutions for most of those challenges so far?
Yes, yeah, we've been able to find solutions, which is handy. I guess from our point of view as well, we're still the businesses themselves are still quite small within each individual company. So there often is ways that we can mitigate the problem. Yeah.
So Shaun, from your side, you obviously work with some larger businesses within that SME space. What kind of scale have you seen achieved with Xero? And then have you had discussions with your clients around this? Do they bring it to you? Do you bring it to them? Is it on their mind? I'd be keen to get your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely had discussions. So no one has moved to an ERP, but a couple of similar to what Luke's saying, there's something's gone here or there, and the conversations come up. A few examples. So one was a brewery that scaled pretty quickly from kind of 1 million to 20+ million, and had a lot of issues around inventory as part of that. And so it was there's not a lot of custom like brewery software that's in the SME space. So NetSuite and those things came into the equation. And the cost was going to be 100,000 plus kind of to put it through. But I think when you dig into it and really get down to accountability, it's about data in, like the quality of the data coming in, and is someone accountable for it? That leads to the outcomes. And so a lot of these questions that were coming up were just bad data is coming in. No one's accountable for purchase orders all going through, getting put through the stock system. So someone assumes it's just the software when it's the people in and around the software. So that definitely came up. Probably one other example, that one of our bigger clients is probably 50+ million with now in the US as well. And they're on a ApprovalMax. I think they're pushing like 9,000 sales invoices through a month, which I believe should be capping out at 0, but it's not also, like it still works. So as long as you're not trying to run a debtor's ledger, it's kind of fine. And they're it tends to be those e-commerce or those wholesalers that sell through internet base that are just large volumes, small value of the sale, that kind of push those limits and ask those questions.
I mean, do you see any reason why, other than I have to go because maybe I've hit a limit with Xero, or let's say that I've hit a limit, I can't go any further with Xero, I can't run any reports, I can't view anything, I have to go ERP. Apart from that, is there anything super attractive about the ERP move from any of your perspective? Is there some reason why I'd want to go ERP over Xero?
Just remind quickly, like I think it's reducing quite quickly. So years ago it was, okay, we've got multi-jurisdiction, FX consolidations don't work, or the head office in the UK is on NetSuite. You have to be on NetSuite for them to see what's going on. And I think Mayday, is amongst other apps, have reduced that space. I remember when we were doing reporting originally, I think it was Futurely at the time, didn't do FX consolidation. So that was, again, it makes something difficult, which there are apps that maybe even Fishly does it now, but I know there are definitely apps that do that in the space.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Justin, it'd be good to get your take. You were at Xero for 10 years. Now you're at ApprovalMax, and I know ApprovalMax does have a NetSuite integration. So do you see a difference between the persona of business that's on NetSuite versus the one that's making it on Xero?
No, not really. Like a decent chunk of the people who go were existing customers who were on Xero, but it's always a case of maybe someone won the internal politics in that company to go to, rather than continuing to look at Xero, and they may not have been aware of something like Mayday existing, and the decision may have been made to move to NetSuite. But I mean, I've heard multi-currency is one. I think also as you get more apps in an app stack, potentially some aspects of your data can be siloed in one particular app, where they might want to be able to just bring up a customer and see everything about that customer in one place. And that is what an ERPs will sell you on. But it could be a very difficult journey to get there. And I think, like, there's so many amazing Xero partners out there that if you leave the Xero ecosystem, you're going to have a much smaller, like, ecosystem of people who can help you implement one of the other one of the ERP solutions out there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I don't think we've discussed it in any of the sessions so far around either the ecosystem or the ERP part. But and I understand that when you talk to an app partner, there's a good chance they're trying to sell you on their software and their solution. But they also know quite a lot about the space, which is why we want to have perspective of someone like you, Justin, on a topic like this, because you see it every day, you deal with it every day. Just like all the app partners, if you do need help or visibility over this issue, or wondering what a solution might look like, or what are the key, as long as you go in eyes wide open, like, hey, I don't need to buy from this person. They're going to try and sell something to me, but I don't need to buy it. I just want to go in and learn as much as I can and hear from them what they can do for me. Then, you come out of those conversations better off.
Well, I was specifically then referring to more accountants and bookkeepers, actually.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the Xero partners themselves is that, there's and then cloud integrators as well. There's a whole community in the Xero ecosystem, with the app community, with the accountants and the bookkeepers, cloud integrators. It's very healthy. Well, whatever you want to do, you could probably find someone who can help you do it. Whereas, that's a real thing you're leaving behind if you leave the Xero ecosystem.
No, absolutely. Good shout. Already had someone from one of the series reach out and say, hey, we're looking at moving to Xero. Didn't think we could, but maybe we can. We'd love to talk to someone about it. So yeah, absolutely. There's some great people in the ecosystem. I might hold the conversation on points 1 to 4 there. It's been really interesting to get your perspective, guys, and reminder to anyone who's here to throw any questions in the chat if you've got any more. As a little bit of a way to summarize the session, I'd love to hear from you all on kind of your top tip or top takeaway or piece of advice for anyone who's potentially dealing with some pain around financial controls at the moment, or approval processes. What is something that is worth leaving them with? Justin, maybe I'll come to you first, and we'll get to questions after this. Yeah,
I guess the starting point would be thinking about how do you want your separation of duties to work. So maybe actually write that out, do a graph, like how do you want it to go, and then we can probably do that for you in ApprovalMax. However it needs to work. And just have a think about what are you doing now, where are the bottlenecks, and then we can probably help you resolve those.
Awesome, thanks, Justin. Shaun, something to take away?
Segue. I think digging into accountability and just what data is coming into a system for me before you start changing systems or before you start trying to add add-ons is to get that right. And often it's even as simple as just getting the chart of accounts right. It's something that Xero doesn't really push enough. They have the world's worst chart of account as their kind of default option. So just defining all the accountability around that, building a good chart of account and building approvals coming out of that is what I would focus on.
Cool. Thanks, Shaun. Luke.
Yeah, I think they've pretty much summed it up quite well, but it's pretty much what do you want for your business? Not every business is the same. There's small things that someone might have never even thought of that you need. So you really have to go in with an open mind and see what works for us and what is going to work. And you can really only do that, as Justin said, just laying it all out and, go through that process slowly. Don't jump into anything just for the sake of doing it. No, we have acquired quite a big culture on process improvement ourselves. And often seems like, oh, this has just come out. Let's go get it. Let's go see what it does. It's like, okay, well, hold up. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to make that move to a certain, even just an add-on to Xero? And just really, take your time, think about it, and implement it correctly.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. All great points to leave people thinking about. Justin, I've got a question in the chat here as we move down to the Q&A section around monthly subscriptions for, I'm assuming ApprovalMax. It doesn't necessarily say here, but just double checking that, within your plans, if there's certain features that people want or don't want, can they mix the features of the plans as per the website? How much flexibility is there around pricing?
Yeah, so in ApprovalMax for Xero, we have 3 plans. We have the standard plan, which the way I see it, that's like your basic approvals. Then you've got your advanced plan. That gives you like what I'd consider financial controls, because it gives you the ability to have contact approvals and build a purchase order matching and a few other budget checking as well. And then you go up to premium, which is where your payment. So that gives you like the ability to do batch payments and the Airwallex integration plus standalone workflow. So in my mind, this is not necessarily how we list it on the website, but standard's kind of basic approvals, and then advanced gives you financial controls, and then the third tier is really about payments.
Awesome.
And we also have annual plans as well. So if you want to go, we do monthly, but if you like if you're sold on ApprovalMax, you want to save 17%, we also do an annual plan.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Justin. We don't have any other questions, so I'll leave the Q&A open if people do pop something in. But just as part of wrapping up, and before I thank you guys for presenting and thanking everybody for coming, I just wanted to call out this Wednesday, we're wrapping the event up. We're wrapping the series up in Sydney at Xero's Sydney HQ. Justin will be there. I'll be there. We'll have a few other people there too to say hey. So please pull your phone out, scan that barcode if you are Sydney based. It would be great to see you there. We're putting on food and drink, and really it'll be an opportunity for us to speak to Xero, speak ourselves a little bit around the various solutions that are out there for businesses who are building an enterprise level system on Xero, and also just to highlight some of the core messages and themes that have come out of the series to date. So if you haven't been able to get to each and every one of these sessions, we should be able to highlight for you kind of the best or top takeaways from the series so far. So we'd love to see you there. Tickets are free. Feel free to share them within the team if you need to, or if you've got a friend who's in Sydney who might enjoy coming, please feel free to share it with them. Other than that, we've got one final webinar tomorrow, which is preparing powerful forecasts and models. So thank you all for coming along to the series so far. One more tomorrow, then the wrap event on Wednesday. Hope to see you at both of those. And yeah, thank you again, Justin, Shaun, Luke. Been brilliant to speak to you all. Thanks for sharing your insights. I assume if people want to reach you or ApprovalMax, Justin, they can just go to the ApprovalMax website or hit you up on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Likewise, Shaun, if you're if you're looking for a virtual CFO service, or you're looking to talk to somebody who's been there and done that with plenty of other Xero businesses before, the team at Air are probably accessible via the website, or Shaun on LinkedIn as well. And Luke, thank you very much for coming to and sharing your own personal journey with Yaron. So yeah, I'm sure if anyone is going through the exact same thing and wants to reach you, they can flick you a message somewhere on LinkedIn or something like that. Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. Appreciate you coming. Thanks for your time today.